Hello. So you want to try growing tomatoes for the first time? Or you have been growing them and you're not having much luck? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through 5 tips I wish I knew before growing tomatoes for the very first time. And if you stick around to the end, I'll have a little bonus tip in there for you as well. So let's get into it. First and foremost is choosing the right tomato for your space. Apart from the hundreds of different varieties that you can grow, you can also delve a little bit deeper and choose tomatoes that only grow to certain heights. So this will make a tomato either determinate or indeterminate. Now you'll find that the majority of varieties are indeterminate. So that means that they will continue to grow. Tomatoes are actually vining plants, so they want to keep growing and climbing as tall as they can. Some varieties can grow up to 20 feet, if you can believe that. So this is my Beams Yellow here. It's already just over 1 meter in height, and it will continue to grow all the way up this stake throughout the season. Another characteristic of an indeterminate tomato is that it will fruit throughout the season as well. So it'll put on fruit and it will keep putting on fruit until the plant dies at the end of the season. Now the other option, of course, is your determinate varieties. This is my Tasmanian chocolate. So it's only sitting at about 50 centimeters-ish. I haven't measured it, but it probably won't grow much bigger than that, which is great, especially if you have a small space. So if you're only growing on a balcony or in a raised bed like this, even as this one has a cover to it, I can still close that without the tomato being squished under, the tomato plant being squished underneath. In regards to determinate varieties, they will reach the height that they're going to reach, and then they will fruit all at once, and then they die. So this is good for those that like to do things like canning or making your passadas. You can get a whole bunch of tomatoes all at once, pick them and make your produce, and then you are done. Now that leads me on to my second tip for you. Once you've decided on whether you're choosing a determinate or an indeterminate variety, if you're going for an indeterminate variety, then you will need to stake your tomatoes. There are a few different ways that you can stake. Here you can see I'm just using the single stake method, but you've also got, you can put a cage around your tomato, or you could do something like the Florida weave. I'll put a picture up here of what both of those do look like. Again, that is going to depend on your budget. If you've got the money to pay the extra for, adding cage wire around your tomatoes. And also the 3 of them have different benefits to them. If you decide on maybe trying the Florida weave or putting a cage around your tomatoes, that does mean you can let the tomatoes grow and become a bit bushier, a bit more unruly, and it will require a little bit less maintenance than just the single stake method. So that does bring me to my third tip, and that is pruning. As your tomato begins to grow, they start to produce side shoots, or sometimes known as suckers. But let's get you a bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. As you can see here, where the leaf comes off of the main stem, it comes off at a 90-degree angle. In between the leaf and the main stem, it has produced this little sucker or side shoot. So this will also continue to grow, and that's where your tomato plant can get huge and unruly. So you can just pinch those out. And there's one on this side. Pinch them out. If you do forget to keep up the maintenance of removing the little side shoots, they can get quite large, as you can see here. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that's the main stem, but it isn't, because you can see the leaf coming out 90 degrees and then the little side shoot coming off at about a 45-degree angle. So this one here is actually the main stem to the tomato plant. So what you can get, I recommend getting the snips for when they get a little bit bigger like this and just trimming it off. Now, whilst it's not essential to remove those side shoots, by doing so you can keep your tomato plant a bit more under control, and also it forces the plant to push its energy into continuing to grow up and also into the production of those tomatoes. So even though you may get less tomatoes because you've pinched off those side shoots which could potentially grow tomatoes, the ones that you do get are going to be sweeter and juicier. Now we're up to my next tip. What number is that? 4? I think we're up to tip number 4. And that is to remove the lower leaves from your tomato plant, especially those that are touching the ground. So taking a sharp pair of snips, trimming off any leaves that are touching the ground. This is going to help reduce the transmission of diseases which may transmit from the soil or the mulch up through the leaves and into your tomato plant or onto your tomato plant. Now, as your tomato grows and puts on more leaves at the top, you can continue to remove those lower leaves, which will allow for more air to flow around the tomato plants, which again can help reduce the chance of diseases. Tip number 5 for you is keeping up the liquid fertilizer. Tomatoes are hungry plants and they love a good feed. So during the growing season, I would be giving them a liquid fertilizer once every 2 weeks, and that will help them produce big, juicy, sweet tomatoes. If you can get something that has trace elements of calcium, because tomatoes love a bit of calcium, and that can help prevent blossom end rot. If you've ever grown tomatoes before and you can see the bottom of them get a little black ring around them and it starts to go a bit squishy and gross, that is called blossom end rot. Now, the factor in that is either a lack of calcium or inconsistent watering, which means that the plant itself can't draw up the calcium that it needs from the soil. The more you know, hey? Now that is my 5 top tips for getting the best out of your tomato plants. And I did promise you a little bonus tip right at the end, but just before that, if you've enjoyed this, you found some value in it, be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me, and maybe give me a subscribe so you can keep up to date with some more gardening hints and tips. And if you have a tip on growing tomatoes that I haven't mentioned that you think is important, be sure to leave it down in the comments so that I can maybe make a future video going through those tips as well. So, those little side shoots that the suckers you've been trimming off your tomato plants, I hope you haven't thrown those away, because these will actually grow roots and you get a whole set of new free, the best thing, tomato plants. So all you need to do is get a little jar of water, stick them in there, wait about 1, maybe 2 weeks, they'll start to produce roots and you can plant them out. And hey presto, more tomato plants, because you can never have too many tomato plants, right? Anyway, thanks for joining me and we'll see you in the next one.